minutes over, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Could you shut those doors back there? Could you shut the doors behind you?
Cheers. Thanks very much. Welcome to this old website where we take an old broken down website and rehab it. The publicity on this said we do it right before your very eyes. Unfortunately, due to the time constraints, we're not going to do that, unfortunately. We can show you after and stuff like that, but we're going to go through a lot of content, try to introduce some things to you. We're not going to teach you how to fish. We're not even going to show you how to fish. We're going to fish, and you're going to watch us, kind of. And hopefully, some of it sticks. Some of it, there's some inspiration there. No, not a lot of code examples and stuff like that. We're going to go really fast. The slides will be available afterwards, so don't take notes. Just sit back, enjoy it. Hopefully, we learn something, have a couple laughs, and go on from there. I'm Wolf Loescher. I'm a mostly back-end, middle-tier developer who dabbles in the front end. I'm kind of like your typical jack of all trades, master of none. And I'm here with the lovely and talented Bertine Buchan.
Bertine Buchan, and I am a front-end developer for Gauge Marketing. And I spend a lot of my time thinking about how to make old sites look good or work better. So
that's who we are. The first question is, why are we doing this? Why are we even talking about HTML5? Because it's trendy and cool and hip and happening. That's true. But there are actually a lot of benefits to using it. And before we get too into the mix, I wanted to get a gauge of where we are at with the audience. How many would classify themselves as front-end developers here? Okay, about half. How about back-end developers? Again, about half. Well, maybe a third. Okay, that's good. And then who are still supporting non-HTML5 sites here? Okay, again, about half. So we got a good, I think, a good mix here. So does anybody not know why you would want to use HTML5? Okay, good. So
wow.
you're already sold. You already drunk the Kool-Aid. You already know. Okay, you just want to know how to do it. That's good. Well, Bertine's going to take over on that one.
So the main reasons why you want to do it is compatibility. It makes things easier when you write new applications. So when you add new things to an existing website too, you can use the standards that there are now, opposed to standards that were around 10 years ago. Maintainability, it makes it easier for new developers to come on there. Not everybody's going to have 15 to 20 years of experience on development. So they're not going to know how to make your tables work correctly because they don't ever have to do that. Accessibility, you use less code with HTML5. The code also has much more meaning, which is not on this list. But it makes it so when you're reading with a screen reader, it works better. Flexibility, I don't remember what my point was with that. Probably has a lot to do with compatibility. And extensibility also with compatibility. It makes it easier to continue to write new code on top of what you already have.
What Bertine doesn't know is it ended with why I put it on the slide, and I left it for her to explain. Basically, if you're not using it, your competitors probably are. If they have a better experience for their product, for their website, then your customers are going to become their customers. So there's your reasoning right there. So HTML5. What's the support on it? It's still, well, somewhat new. You know, it's newer than HTML4. You can do the math. But right now we got support for it in all the current browsers, and there are pretty decent fixes and plugins and stuff to make it work in older browsers, IE6 and whatnot. And we'll be giving you a lot of stuff you can do with this cool HTML5 technology. We'll be giving with this hand, and with the other hand, the legacy technology will be taking away some of that. So just be prepared for some of that.
So there's some things that you can do. These are basically the items that you can do right now on your existing website to make it HTML5. First thing you can do is doc type, and we're going to go over all of these. Semantic Markup, that's where I was looking for. HTML5 shim, which is a way to make it work in IE6, 7, and 8. There's input types that you can do to make your forms work correctly on mobile devices. Have you ever typed something into a phone number and you really want a number but you don't have it? And then audio video tags, because Flash is not supported on so many tablets that you want to have that capability.
There's some other ones, of course, the HTML5 standard, things like geolocation and canvas and SVG graphics. But if you're supporting the existing site that's not HTML5, likely you're not using those, so we don't have to talk about that. You have some useful sites you wanted to mention?
Oh, yeah. Sites that you can do to read about HTML5 and whether or not they're working is html5please.com and caniuse.com. Both of those are sites that you can go to see whether or not what you want to use is supported in older browsers and how to actually implement them. They're very useful, and they're in the resources at the end of the slide. So
yeah, we'll have links all at the end, so you don't have to write them down.
I think that seems fine too. So the very first thing you can do on a website to make it HTML5 is add this stock type. It's much shorter than the HTML4 one. I didn't have an example of this because they just want you to use this. You put that on there, all of a sudden your site's in HTML5. Voila, you are now in the future. I would like to say one thing that I've noticed.
Let's ask to see if anybody know why you wouldn't want to do this. Anybody?
Anybody?
Bueller? Anyone?
Why would you not want to put your HTML5 doc type on the top of your if you have that tag in there, yes. It would break it, but that tag works in conjunction with the HTML5 doc type.
And you get, sir, a cool USB pen swag for answering
we have
a
prizes.
question.
The other main reason, and you are going to laugh when you hear this one, but it's happened to me a few times. If the website was built without a doc type at all, it's in quirks mode. And once you put an HTML5 doc type on there, it's going to break everything. And if that's your life, which I've had to do, fix all those problems first. It'll make your life easier.
So, but this is the one thing you can do. Suddenly you have an HTML5 site. So, you know, as a standard quote from our friend Obi-Wan. So this is also, if you're playing along with the bad tech presentation bingo, this is your ubiquitous geek cultural reference, so mark that off on your cards. Okay. The whole thing about semantic markup is you're giving tags. You don't have div soup anymore. You've got tags that actually mean something. Where's the main section in your page? Titles, asides, things like that. This is an example, a simple example of how that might work. These are great for accessibility situations when you have screen readers. They also are helpful for your SEO rankings. So again, why are we doing HTML5? Those are some more reasons why. This is why you're defending. This is why you're putting resources toward taking your existing site and porting it over. There's a few other good elements that you mentioned on there.
Yeah, a good list is on html5doctor.com. There's the list of every element in HTML that is now valid in HTML5. So go read it and see what you can do. All of these ones right here replace the div tag. So you can do this right away on your site. If you're in there, you're fixing something up, you're like, this is really a navigation section, use your nav tag. It's very easy. However, one thing you're going to want to remember is IE 6, 7, and 8 does not support HTML5. However, you can use HTML5 shim. It's on the Google API. It's great. It works. Everything works. The only thing you have to think about is if you have to support non-JavaScript users, this will not work. It uses JavaScript to insert elements into the DOM, so then it can render correctly. So you really want to make sure that's one of the things you have to think about.
Also, I meant to mention at the top of the hour the hashtag there if you want to tweet and give us some feedback and say how wonderful we are as we bash IE like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Okay, required things like these are the input fields we were talking about really quickly. Gives you a chance to take the input and actually make it much smarter, which is going to help everybody. If you're not using this, you're missing out on a lot of extra power for nothing. You get required fields, you get data validation. They're all here. You can check it out on the slide. I'm going to go move forward.
It works, and then it falls back to text on IE 6, 7, 8, and I don't remember if 9 uses or not, but. Let's see, so you can also update your audio and video controls. These might be another thing that you want to do on a website. And the main reason you want to do this is because Flash is not supported. Your videos are probably right now in Flash on your current site. What you can do is you can use these, and there's some resources at the end of this about how to use these. And then put where it says your browser does not support the video tag, you can put your Flash in there. So you have your video in a new format, and then it falls back for the older users. Or you can just have it not fall back at all. So no video, no audio for legacy browsers.
No video for you, 1 year.
Yes.
Okay, and that's HTML5. We're going to keep going forward. We got a lot of cover, so thanks for hanging on with us. We're going to move right into CSS3. Me. Major CSS3 components we're going to cover here. Rounded corners, shadows, you can read as well as I can, so I won't go through that list. That's what we're going to be covering. Useful sites?
Useful sites are CSS3please.com, HTML5 please, and the CSS3 generator. Again, all of these are at the end, but these are very useful things that will help you build it or learn about each of these items.
And I think this is the section where Bertine's taking, because she's
Yeah.
like the queen of front end.
Okay, so this is an example of how you do rounded corners. It's very, very simple. Now, how many of you guys have ever cut an image to make a rounded corner on a website? Yeah. You can replace all these images with this right here. One line with some prefixes. There's a website at the end of this, again, that tells you how to do the prefixes. But it makes your life so much easier. No longer do you have to worry about how big your element is to make it work. It's so much easier.
Can I get a yeah?
Yeah.
Can I get a hell yeah? That's right.
Again, he's much funnier than I am. Here's the shadow. Here's how you do shadow. Again, one line with maybe some prefixes. But again, how many times have you done a shadow where you cut a really long, thin image, try to get it, and then all of a sudden that needs to be bigger, so then you have to change it. And you have 20 different shadow images for your website. You only have to do CSS now. And you can actually just make one class called shadow and reuse it because it will scale to the size of the element that you have. It's very sweet. The other really great one to use is a gradient background. This is a linear gradient. And again, this one's a little bit more complicated to use because there's more vendor prefixes and there's more math involved, especially if you start doing radio gradients. But one line, your gradient will always be either the height or the width of whatever element you have. So again, you're not cutting images all the time. These three things will save so much time for you in front-end development that it's worth just trying to do it. And then I know you're all wondering, if you're not doing this every day, how in the world do you get this to work in IE 6, 7, and 8? Well, there's something that will come up after he talks about something else. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Was this one? Did we skip one?
No. Okay, it's still me.
It's still you.
Yeah. This is the additional CSS3 properties that you can use. To tell you the truth, if I'm doing a legacy website or doing a site that's already existing, I find most of these not really useful because they take too much time to shim and polyfill. But if you're starting with a new site, they are actually really kind of useful. So border image is great. Multiple background images is amazing. No more do you have to have 2 divs to get your background image correctly. Box sizing is really nice. There's a whole hack about box sizing to make the positioning model work correctly. Yeah, and RBGA is also very good. But with IE, there is a really great polyfill called CSS3. I have used this on every site that I've written in the last 2 years, and I've never had a problem with it. I highly, highly recommend using this. This allows you to do gradients, rounded corners, and text shadows right out of the box. You don't even have to worry about it. You add one more line to your vendor prefixes. Yeah? Oh, it doesn't do single corners. It's not right. There is ways around that, though. So, yeah. It does not do single corners. But for the most part,
Participate and you get stuff.
Yeah, for the most part, you don't have single corners for your rounded corners. You usually have all 4 sides, especially buttons, which is the really common thing. What's pretty funny about this, though, is now that we can do gradients and text shadow or in shadows and rounded corners really easily, no design is coming out that way anymore. It's all flat and square
Metro.
and all that. So, yeah.
The metroization of the web.
Yep.
So again, also, how things were so hard for us. You have a custom font, has to be look just like that on the websites. You have images of different sizes. You have the logo in 6 different times. Now you can take that all away using web fonts. Lots of stuff out there specifically. Yeah, thank you. And I get another amen there on that one. And you get how many times? Who's had a typo in a font image they had to recut how many times? Oh, right. Exactly.
Or they just changed the text.
Yeah. So great resources there, the Google fonts, and there's also something. The only problem with this, though, is if you have a specific font that your brand has to use that is not supported by the fonts. I'm looking at UApple, I'm looking at U3M, things like that. So then you got to use their fonts. And
if your font is Helvetica New, you cannot use it as a web license. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
So don't do that.
Yeah. Do it on your own risk.
Yeah.
So one really great thing that I love about web fonts, and by the way, web fonts are supported back to IE 5.5. They don't look as good in IE and the earlier versions of IE because they don't have clear text. But you can use them. They're one of the better supported aspects of modern web development. One thing I do all the time is, or not all the time, I've done in the past is icon fonts. So this is actually from a website that I made, and actually Amy Berger over here made this icon. She used Icon Moon, or Ico Moon, and so we have all these little icons that is basically a font file. You embed them in there, and you can make them any color or any size you want right in the text. It also lines up really easily and really nicely. It's a really great technique that saves you a lot of time and saves on bandwidth for you don't have to download so many images.
And they scale and they resize. So then all their different screen sizes. So you might have noticed a little bit of a pattern here, what we were saying, with the resizing and the scaling. Extra points for the Doctor Who fans who are playing the game. Okay, good. And you'll see, of course, why scaling and resizing is important as we move on.
So there's also another really handy thing in HTML5 CSS3. It's selectors. These are all most of the selectors you can use right now. I'm not going to go over these. What was the second?
Although there will be a quiz at the end.
Yeah, there will be a quiz. So memorize them. It is like my favorite one I use is element greater than element. That's the child selector. You ever done an UL, an LI, and then a UL and an LI? It solves all that. However, that isn't supported in IE6. It's not supported in other ones. If you go to HTML5please.com, it tells you what browsers support which ones, basically which IEs support these. All the other browsers use them. I actually like IE. It's I use IE10 all the time, so, but not IE6.
And I think this was also yours.
Oh, is it? Okay. So the other thing I really highly recommend that's worth taking your time to do when you're revamping an old site and coming to a new one is adding a reset or a normalize. It's going to make you, how many of you guys know what a reset and normalize is?
How many's never used one before? Good.
How many like reset? How many people like normalize? I'm a normalize person.
Thus, religious wars are started.
Yes. I prefer normalize, but so basically reset clears out all of the browser's default styles. Normalize makes them all the same across all the different browsers. But I highly recommend doing this. It's going to be some work if you don't use it already, but it'll make it much easier for cross-browser testing and everything when you get to that point. Ever since I've started using this, either one of them, I have spent less time finding bugs. Just a tip, though, if you're going to use Normalize, you have to use version 1 if you want less than IE8 support. So just choose wisely when you're doing those. You're just going to overwrite styles, so I wouldn't do so.
Yeah, for those of you who have not used it before, reset is your nuclear option, and normalize is the new black. So there you go.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on halfway through the presentation. How's the tempo? Everybody good with it? Still with us? Okay.
I might be talking too fast. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah. So any questions? We'll take a quick questions on CSS3, HTML5. Anything we've covered so far? Anybody?
Ico Moon.
Ico Moon. And the links will all be in the slide deck, which you can download. Yes,
but
sir.
yeah, it just... I don't think it's case sensitive, but does it? Yeah, just find it on the internet and copy and paste. That's what I do.
And that's a great question.
It is a great question because I didn't even know the answer. Cut, paste, cut, paste. Yeah? That's a great point. That's why I use background image, but I do have some coworkers who do background as shorthand, but that's just because I always overwrite myself. So, and any other questions? 6. I've used it in 6. It's a little slow in 6, so don't go wild on it. You know, do like 3 or 4 if you're trying to support IE6. There's some, if you do decide to use CSS3, read the FAQ, because there's a couple little tricks. You have to do position relative on some stuff, and you have to do has layout, which is zoom :1. But other than that, that solves 90% of the problems with it. Do you mean where the gradient I've used it many times with both of those. We can talk afterwards. So, anybody, any other ones? Okay. I think we might be almost out of pens.
Yeah.
So
we're getting close.
Yeah.
So this all leads us up to the great thing about all this technology, which leads us to responsive design, where you have a website that looks good not just on the desktop, not just on a mobile device, but on both, where you can adapt what you have and make it just sing, basically. And that's where we get into using these technologies and applying them. Eventually we get to the point where you say, there's so much we can do with these new technologies and these new plugins and things like that. We have to make a decision. Do we try to rehab what we have and fix it up? Is it a fixer-upper, or is it a teardown? Do we go ahead and just start from the ground zero and go forward? So we're going to cover some of that in the next few slides. So major reasons for using these major components of the responsive design: fluid grids, things like that. You can read. Those are those things here. So that's what we'll be covering in this last half of the presentation.
Okay, we're not actually going to cover fluid grids too much, because I could spend an entire 40 minutes talking about fluid grids. Basically, the concept is, and again, I have links at the end of this, so you should download the slides and read these articles. Everything's based on percentages. So if you have a with these font ones, so 100% font is equal to 1 EM, which is equal to 16 pixels, which is equal to 14 points. And then if you want a 90% font, it's all based on that. Now imagine that on your layout. You have a 960 wide thing with a 200 column on one side and a 760 on the other side. You start doing all the percentages based on that, and it'll grow and contract and grow when you move the window open. See, I can spend 40 minutes on this whole thing, and maybe someday I'll make one about it. But it's really worth learning, because it'll make your site work in all sizes.
Again, if you look at the amount of requests and the traffic, more mobile traffic is happening now than desktop traffic. That was not said very well. There's more mobile traffic than there is desktop traffic. That's only going to increase over time. Do you have a question? That's true. Although if you've got an iPad in your pocket, that's a pretty big pocket.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I usually do high heights. I just kind of let the height happen as it is. Let the content be the basis of the height. It's very rare that a design needs a specific height for it. Mm-hmm. Usually when you're trying to switch out the height, you don't want things jumping around.
Although it is interesting to see with the Metro design coming out where you're scrolling horizontally, and if that will become more impressive on the way people design websites. Right now everybody's used to scrolling up and down. Maybe at some point it'll be like a book. So we'll see. That might adapt, and then it becomes more important.
It is true. I did recently do a website that had a height that was always full screen, and things were percentage based, I think. So I don't remember. It was like a year ago.
So again, we use these things, the percentages and the M's, because then your site will rescale and resize as necessary. So as I said, again, we're going to see more of that, and that's why this is so helpful to us. Okay, any extra points? Anybody actually get hit in the head by one of these when they were a kid and survive? I happen to be one of those, so I don't know what they had in them. Like they were like the density of a white dwarf or something like that, but it was pink. Remember that? Oh, sorry, I digress.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing you can do with the responsive design is target specific screen sizes. This was really prevalent 2 to 3 to 4 years ago when the iPhone came out, and it actually had a decent mobile web browsing experience. How many remember 3 or 4 years ago? But the thing that's happening now with the proliferation of mobile devices, everything from iPhone to Android to everything like that, even to the new BlackBerry revision, I'm sure they will rise again. The proliferation of screen sizes, you don't really want to target those screen sizes, because an Android may be 5 pixels different than an iPhone or something like that. So what you want to do is work closely with your designers and have those breakpoints occur when it makes sense for your design. There's a lot of font layout theory and typography theory about how many characters per line or how many words per column, things like that. You can actually build those things into your responsive design so you have a really elegant resizing that is really artistically correct, and you get your designers to geek out with you on that.
Right, and this is where fluid grids come in handy because they handle all of the sizes in between your breakpoints. So let's say you go from 1240 to 380, and those were your two breakpoints. That would be kind of weird, but if you did, everything between 1240 and 380 would just kind of flow with the browser. You would never have anything you had to horizontally scroll for. You had a question? Okay. You can ask me questions, and we'll have questions afterwards. So.
Yeah.
We actually took that out, but we can talk about that. The problem with taking an existing site over to a responsive design in the whole mobile first concept is when you go mobile first, it takes a whole new re-strategizing on the website, and most companies don't want to invest in that. They just want it responsive. They want it to work on a mobile device. So as great as it would be to go mobile first, by the way, for people who don't know, is a concept where you say, what do I want on my mobile site? And then that's what I'm going to do on my desktop site, and then maybe add some more stuff in. But it's hard to do an existing website. You've already figured out what you want, so try to shove it all in there. When you get to the responsive part, all those first parts of CSS3 and HTML5, you can do without a designer. This part, you're probably going to need a designer.
Yeah, you'll have to have buy-in from the people who make the decisions and write the checks on, okay, on a mobile screen, what goes on top? Does the advertising go on top? Does the menu go on top? How do you adapt that so you have an experience that's really good for mobile as well as a desktop? But you got to have some teamwork there to make that happen. What happens when you go to a mobile device with a smaller screen, you have to start thinking about screenfuls of information. Evan Dahl, I think, coined that term. And you got to think about, okay, I just need a little snack here of information as opposed to on the desktop I need a full meal. So you got to make those decisions and rearrange things and organize and font sizes and things like that. I'm sure you have access to great designers. Bring them in. Work with them closely, and make it a collaborative thing where you're learning from them, they learn from you.
Yeah, this is a lot harder than just putting an HTML5 doc type on the top of your page.
Yeah. We're way beyond that.
Yeah, we're way beyond that. So this is an example of the media query, exactly what you do. You're saying everything, so print and screen, where the max width is 768 and the min width is 701. I want the font size to be 0.88, blah, 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 EMs. By the way, browsers round really well, so put the whole number in there.
Yeah, funny enough, computers are good at doing math.
Yeah. So yeah, and then that way, like with this one, it would just make your font size smaller than what it is on the whole site. And there's actually a really cool thing that's just come out on the CSS3 spec, which is REM. And that says it's based on the page size.
And it sets background music to this cool band from the 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Question back here. Yes, her name is Bertine. Next question. I use Firefox. That's what I usually develop in. I mean, some people might like Chrome better, or IE. What? Yeah, responsive.com. We got some of these coming up too. Yeah,
but I actually like seen it in the actual size of the browser. I don't know why, but there's. Oh, the devices. Nope. We just see the size. I know BrowserStack does mobile devices, and they do all the other browsers and stuff. So if you really need to see what it looks like on an Android, you can do so. And sometimes there are bugs that you need to do that with. Just BrowserStack. I actually don't even think I put that in here, so that one you might want to write down. Browserstack.com. It's a pay site.
Opera mobile emulator?
Yeah.
Okay. There's also a place, I think, downtown that's like a lab that has devices that you can like rent by the hour. And you can go in and try your website on all these different things. I can't recall the name of it. If anybody knows it, ping us and we'll add that.
My company actually has an iPad, a Surface, Windows Phone, Droids, iPhone. Well, I have an iPhone, but you know, they actually got
Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. What? I have never actually tried any of my websites on that. Hopefully it works.
Moving on, so responsive design, you can certainly roll your own, but if you're getting started and just getting your feet wet on this, especially if you've got an existing site, it might make sense to go with a framework. So here's some example of the frameworks you might go with. We're going to be seeing an example that I did shortly with the 966 grid, and it just basically gives you columns. So you can work with your designers and say, here's your grid, tell me where this should be, and then you can translate that with good fidelity, which is a word I heard in an earlier presentation about the fidelity of the design and maintaining that from your initial mocks to your production. So these are the tools that will help you do that. They're really helpful, and you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
I was just going to mention that if you have an existing website that doesn't use a grid, you're probably going to have a really hard time using a grid system. Also, a lot of these, I don't actually use any of these. I've taken the HTML5 boilerplate, ripped out what I don't want, and then kind of added my own stuff. But, and so it might be worth it for you to make your own because it has exactly what you know.
Yeah, so here's a quick example, and if we have time, I'll go back and show you the live example where we've actually, again, this is that 996 grid. This is a site I work on for Brandpoint. And we've got the full desktop, and then we've got the different breakpoints of the different screen sizes, and you can see how things sort of adapt. We go to different, we can even drop out actual text and fonts and things like that, down all the way down to the mobile size where we end up with a hamburger and a pull-down menu. And there's lots of different strategies you can see like that. Take the time and learn from the best. Real smart people steal from other people because you go look at Google and how they do it. You look at Facebook and how they do it and don't do it. You go and look at Apple and how they do it. Take these ideas, and they've spent hundreds and millions of dollars on the testing and the UI testing and all the lab work that's necessary. So learn from their work. Make it look like that.
Yeah, if you work for an agency, no client's ever going to pay for testing. I've never had one do so. No, for like, which of these are the better way to do it? Yeah, they'll pay for testing. Yeah, A/B testing, sorry.
Although I've just run across, and I haven't actually used it yet, I'm excited about it. My boss actually brought it to my attention. Is he here? There he is. Optimizely.com, which is a product by one of the Google founders that actually lets you do A/B testing in a live sort of setting.
Really?
I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
That's cool.
So check that out.
All right, so I'm sure every one of you guys thinks tables for layout are evil, right?
Does anybody not?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I have only stopped using it because Bertine made me stop using it.
I did.
She took the T key off of my keyboard, so I couldn't do
did.
it anymore.
Yeah.
Right, I'm no able.
So here's an example of what code looks like with a table and with a UL. And if you have, and let's just imagine you have some content that's like A, B, A, B, A, B, or whatever. And that's how you want it. You want it to be a grid of 2 by 3. When you go to respond, you can do that very easily in a table. And a lot of people, especially back-end developers who aren't fully immersed in this and learned HTML 10 years ago, no offense to anybody, this is how they think, and it's totally fine. I mean, you still have to do emails this way. So, but the problem with this is that it is not flexible. So let's say when you go to a responsive design, you want it to be instead of 2 by 3, you want it by 3 by 2. There's really no good way of doing that without JavaScript with a table. But with a UL, which is still is a container that you can put all your data in, you can have it go 6 by 1 or 2 by 3 or 4 and 2, however you want to. You can have it expand and contract. And that is, I mean, table has a lot more code. It has a lot more for the browser to render, but really that's my main reason why you shouldn't use tables. It makes your life hard.
Yeah, if it's not tabular data, it doesn't belong in a table. Yes?
So a responsive table? Yeah, I actually put a link at the end of this for responsive tables. So let's say you actually need data. You have like a spreadsheet on a website, and you really want that to shrink down. There's some ways to do it. It's not necessarily easy. And it's not because of the code that's not easy. It's not easy because you have to figure out how you want the layout to be. I'm not a designer. So I'm like, somebody else figured this out for me. So when you're doing it that way, I showed some code some links for code on how to do it, but don't ask me to design it.
Friends don't let friends use tables.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's wrap it all up, bring it to the end now. We've got all these wonderful technologies we can have access to, and you actually have an existing website and have to decide, okay, I want to play with all these new toys. How do I make that happen? And you come down to making the very hard decision of which course do you take.
Okay, so if you're going to, the reasons you would want to remodel instead of tear down is if you need it to be pixel perfect. It's much easier to do each little section at a time. You know, you can go through and just do one little part at a time as you're developing it, as you're making upgrades in other ways. You can really, truly, slowly convert your site over to HTML5. If you don't have a lot of budget or a lot of buy-in to do this, again, it's the same thing. You can do a little bit at a time. It's not going to take you much more time to add a section tag as a div tag. So, you know, if you have a lot of legacy browser support, actually this could go on both sides. But if you already have stuff in Flash and you already have your images cut, don't recut them. If it works, once it breaks, then you can do it, you know. Also, I worked at this company that never stopped developing their website. So before I worked at an agency, and we never had a moment where we could spend 6 months to tear down the site and then rebuild it, because they were constantly adding new features. It is very difficult to do a complete teardown when you still need to use something. So.
Yeah, so that's just realities of the market. But let's say you do have the opportunity to start from scratch. That's great, especially when you have the chance to, there's a back-end rewrite, you're actually redoing your data structures, you're switching to web services instead of direct data calls, things like that. That's a great time to look at something like this. If there's a significant redesign, you're rebranding, new logo, new color scheme, things like that, that's another great time for that, where you can actually get in there with your designers, work side by side with them, and figure out ways to make their designs work. And then finally, if it's very important, if a lot of your traffic is coming from mobile devices, from phones or whatever, then it's really important for you to have your site look good on those devices. One thing to note, even when you tear down, there's nothing to keep you from doing parallel development. You can maintain the existing site, and just any new pages that come on can use the HTML5 layouts and HTML5 master pages and things like that, and responsive design. And then you can fold back into the other stuff as you go on. So we've got about 4 minutes left for Q&A. We wanted to thank you very much for your time, first of all. I'm Wolf Loescher. This is Bertine. She's been here. I'm working for Brandpoint, and you can shoot me a Twitter there. And Bertine's working for Gage, both great companies. And if you want to download the slides, you can go to this link here.
That's what you should write down.
Yeah, any questions?
Yep. I won't show you my least favorite because they're ones I worked on. But I actually, you know that bacon?
Find bacon.
Find bacon. I really like that one because it really shows the what you can do with it without distracting people with content.
I'm going to try jumping out here real quick.
I mean, because sometimes, here's the thing, I'm constantly trying to get my company, I work for an agency, Gage is an agency, and so I'm trying to get our account people to learn about responsive design so then they can sell it to our clients. And so I always try to find sites that are really cool, and I think Find Bacon is the best one to show them that, look, this is what you can do.
Sorry.
What? Yeah. They'd be like, we're fine.
Yeah,
I'm actually not in any of those meetings.
Yeah, sales is up to somebody else. We just, you know, let them do it. We give them the technology and the tools, and then they have to work out the options.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, even retrofitting a site that you wrote last week, I mean literally last week, into a responsive design next week is difficult. So if you think there's even a possibility that you're going to do responsive, put those things in there. This is my lesson I learned on Friday. So. Okay. So any other questions?
Thank you so much. You've been a great audience.
Yeah.
We hope to see you next. Thanks to the sponsors.